So here we go. The Silent Hill series official Nubzombie tier list. Silent Hill 1. This might be controversial right off the bat. A tier. I think a lot of people would argue that Silent Hill 1 should be an S. I think there might be some people who would argue that it should be lower. For me, Silent Hill 1 is A tier. This is the game that started the series. And for me, like, my introduction to this game, like, was not my first horror game, the way it might have been for a lot of people. Before Silent Hill came out in 1999, I had already played Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 2. I had already played stuff like Alone in the Dark and Seventh Guest and a lot of other horror games. So I was reading, horror novels. I was reading stuff like Stephen King at a pretty young age. My mother is a really big fan of Stephen King, so we had like all of his books. And I really enjoyed reading from a super young age. So I probably got into reading things I maybe shouldn't have, but I was very familiar with horror. I've been a little fan of horror ever since I was a kid. And Silent Hill 1 has a very particular vivid memory in my mind. This game came out. I got this game as a late birthday gift about a month after my birthday. And that was around February something, 1999. And I can remember going with a friend, like, took my copy of the game, got on my bike, went to my friend's house, and we were sitting in his room to play it. It was like a nice day outside, mid-afternoon, sun was shining, birds are chirping. We had the window open, so there's like fresh air in the room. Least scary setting you could possibly imagine. And me and my friend sit down, we put Silent Hill 1 in, and something about that game, the sound design of it, just watching the intro, struck us as so different to any other horror we had experienced at that point. It felt evil, and I don't know how else to describe that feeling. It felt like there was something actually wrong, that we were like experiencing something we shouldn't be the first time we played it. And we didn't get that feeling booting up Resident Evil and shooting zombies. We didn't get that feeling, from other stuff. Silent Hill had a way of being the scariest thing without a single monster on the screen. Just sound effects and visuals alone made us get to a point where we were so on edge, not knowing what to expect. We played the game until it was dark. Like, until my friend's mom came and told me, like, I have to go home now. And we made it to Midwich. We played it for probably like 6 hours that day. And it took us that long just to get to Midwich. Just to get through the town's, streets, find the keys to the Eclipse, find the doghouse key, get to Midwich. We set foot into the courtyard of Midwich for the first time with the darkness and the mumblers walking towards us. and we shut it off. We didn't bother going and trying to find a save point. We didn't bother trying to figure out like, oh, we'll come back to this. We had that moment of like, this is too much. I want to shut this off. Like, we were just so tense playing this game. It was unlike any other horror game we'd experienced by that point. There was something so just unique and interesting about it. Now, going back to Silent Hill 1, it's a little dated. And I say that, I think, being very kind and generous, because I love this game. It's a bit dated. There's some things about it that don't really hold up. There's some stuff with it that, even for the time, probably could have been handled a little differently, a little bit better. But it is still such an iconic thing. Such a brilliant piece of horror history now. The story, absolutely amazing. It left you questioning so much, where there's a lot of things out there. There's a lot of stories, a lot of narratives, whether it's a novel or a movie or a game, where you're left questioning in a bad way. It feels like nothing made sense in a very bad way. Silent Hill was one of the first times I think I experienced something leaving me confused and leaving me with a lot of questions that wasn't frustrating. It didn't feel bad. It made you want to revisit it. It's like there's enough there that you know the answer to the question you have is there. You just have to revisit the game to find that. And the game itself was so scary, so difficult to revisit, let alone visit the first time. It was that tug and pull of like, it's horrifying and I don't want to put myself back into it, but I just have to know. I have to know. Who was that person? What did this thing mean? What did that represent? And I've just been hooked. I've been hooked ever since. There's so little out there that can do that and do that well. And Silent Hill 1, it's got its rough edges. It's got its flaws, you know. But this one, solid A tier for me. I think if it had been translated a little bit better, I think if there had been a bit more in terms of dialogue, not even necessarily voiced dialogue, but a little bit more in terms of text and characterization, all things that Team Silent, I think, recognized and expanded upon and focused on when it came to Silent Hill 2 and onward. Those aspects, I think, were still a little bit weak when it comes to Silent Hill 1. But gameplay-wise, it took the survival horror, tank control, puzzles, you know, pick up pieces of the puzzle in your inventory, take them where they need to go, figure a thing out, get a key. It was a familiar line of gameplay progression, something similar to a Resident Evil or You're Alone in the Dark, but managed to change those aspects enough that it still felt like its own thing, and in a lot of ways really improved on those existing things. So tank controls, I was fine with tank controls. They were standard for the genre at the time. So I think people back then didn't struggle with it as much as people do now. Younger gamers trying to go backwards to tank controls probably have way more difficulty with it than somebody who grew up with that stuff. So, but even compared to like Resident Evil tank controls, you've got strafing and quick turning and attacking while moving, things that weren't really around in the genre that were noticeable at the time for Silent Hill 1. It sounds kind of mundane talking about it now compared to the depth that goes into a lot of combat mechanics and movement mechanics and things like that in modern games, but those types of improvements on an existing system for controls and you know, just survival horror in general really did add a lot to Silent Hill to kind of put it above a lot of other things. It also did a lot of things for the time from a technology standpoint that were really impressive. Having the town be so open and so explorable. There are so few games on the PlayStation 1 that give you a town that you can just run around in. And you're not going to hit a loading screen at the end of every street. You can look at some similar games that tried to do that sort of environment and weren't able to pull it off as successfully because you'd take 6 steps and you'd get a loading screen to load the next little chunk of map. And then you'd take 7 steps and then you'd get to the next loading screen. And then, you know, think about Resident Evil. How many times you go up the stairs and you get your little cutaway cutscene of walk up the stair step by step, and then you're in the next area. Silent Hill would just be like, yeah, here's the stairs. They go up to the bridge control room. There's no loading screen. You're there. You're on the street, and then you walk up. You run down the street, and the camera will change, but the game won't stop. The game doesn't stop and load anything. It's there. The only real separation you have is the drawbridge area connecting the first 2 halves of the town and the resort area, which is off as its own little chunk of map. But having these big open maps, granted, because you had all of that, you had the rendering distance problem, but then they mask that with the fog and the darkness and the lighting effects, which gave it this really unique feeling of being somewhere that is out and open and explorable, but you still feel trapped. You still have that sort of isolated feeling where you're running through the town and it is big and open and there's no loading screens and you have this uninterrupted gameplay of exploration and getting from place to place, and you can't see more than 5 feet in any given direction, so you never know what's going to be there, what's the next thing I'm going to encounter. You hear it before you see it with the use of the radio, so that you have this entire other aspect of horror that you don't know is there yet. You hear it before you see it. You see it before you interact with it. It's never just like, bam, it's in your face. And it's never divided up where you kind of feel like you're just going from little chunk to little chunk with interaction, you know, A and interaction B. It felt very open. The town felt very real. And it was full of detail. It wasn't just empty streets and plain buildings. The buildings all had signs, and they all had texture, and some of them had blood. And it's like, well, what's that blood puddle there? What's the story behind that? All these little things to make your mind race and make you try to figure things out. And it made just exploring the town interesting. It made the town a character rather than a setting. Like, the town has a history to it, and it makes you care about that history because you want to know what's going on. There's detail in all the buildings, little stories. Why is this abandoned? Why is this one boarded up but not this one? What, and that unique aspect of Silent Hill puts it up, like, above obviously a lot of other games in the series, but just a lot of horror games in general, especially for that time period. So I would say the writing is a little bit weak at times. Character dialogue is a little bit weak at times. Going back to it can be a bit difficult, especially for newer and younger gamers, just because it's a little clunky and dated. But Silent Hill, excellent game, A tier. Irimi, thank you so much for the 76 months. Really appreciate it. Need to put another tier below F and just name it Book of Memories. If there was another tier below F, it would not be Book of Memories. Out of the list of things we have here, it would not be Book of Memories in that tier for me. Maybe for you. Book of Memories is down there, but we'll get there. There's something on this list I would put below it. Silent Hill play novel. Silent Hill play novel. The original Silent Hill game adapted into a visual novel for the Game Boy Advance. Only ever released in Japan. It only got unofficially, translated to English by fans. It's got a little unique twist on the story, several unique twists on the story. You can play through Harry Mason's scenario, which more or less follows the story of Silent Hill 1. There's also a secondary scenario where you can play as Sybil, and there's lost media. There was DLC. There was some of the first instances of downloadable content for something like a Game Boy Advance game, where you could get additional scenarios for a new character named Andy, who was one of a little neighbor kid that lived next door to the Masons, who snuck into Harry's car. He was there the whole time. Nobody knows about little Andy. Andy was in Harry's car the whole time. Hopefully he survived the crash. But nobody will ever know because, like I said, it's essentially lost media. It's an entire downloadable set of scenarios and things for the play novel. I would say, for me, play novel is C tier. It's interesting for what it is, but at its best, it's basically like reading Silent Hill 1 as a short book. At its worst, it is insane and bizarre and takes some very strange liberties with characters and endings and branching pathways to the story. There's some crazy shit that happens potentially in play novel. There's a version of the story in play novel where Cheryl shoots Harry with his own gun. There's an ending where Harry makes it out of the town and goes home and commits suicide. There's some weird ass stuff in play novel. At the end of the day, it's a text game. It's a text-based game. They digitized some scenes from the PlayStation game. They made some new stuff, like new still CG scenes for it, and little sprites and stuff for it. They made new music for it. But this was technically the first, like, not Silent Hill game, where they didn't have people from the original core dev team of Silent Hill 1 working on the play novel. It was done by a completely separate group of people at Konami. So it's, like I said, it's interesting for what it is. It's C tier though. There's not much gameplay to it. There's like 2 puzzles that are not in the original game, and they're very, very simple. Interesting thing, just conceptually, it's interesting, but there's not a whole lot I think you can get out of it. If you're a fan of Silent Hill 1 and you just want some more essentially officially licensed fan fiction to go along with your Silent Hill 1 experience, you might have fun going through play novel. Or if you just want to see some weird alternative universe twists and turns to the Silent Hill 1 story. But yeah, gameplay wise, you're just going to be reading the text and push the button to turn the page, read the text, turn the button, turn the page, hit the button. And that's it. So it's neat, but it's not anything stellar. It's not horrible either. So C tier. Silent Hill 2. Original Silent Hill 2. S tier. Surprising absolutely nobody. Silent Hill 2. My favorite game of the series for 24 years and running. It's just so fucking good. It's out of anything in this entire franchise. You can talk to people who are not gamers, who hardly know what Silent Hill is at all, and they probably know Silent Hill 2. Or the movie. I guess these days it would probably be the movie more than anything, but if anyone's going to recognize anything from the games, it's probably something Silent Hill 2 related. It's Pyramid Head or nurses or James or something that started with 2. Like I said, everything that I said about Silent Hill 1 being amazing and groundbreaking for the time, Silent Hill 2 took it all a step further. The subject matter of the story was intense and mature. It was one of the most sort of gritty stories that I had experienced at that time. There's not even games that were considered mature games for 2001 didn't tackle a lot of the subject matter that's in Silent Hill 2, or didn't approach it with such a grounded way of telling it as Silent Hill 2. The characters felt real, and a lot of that had to do with the care that went into their design, the technology being used. Motion capture was still very new, so the idea of capturing your actors who are also performing the voices was not really a thing. The methods they used to capture all of the actors' performances, they had the actors together on a stage in the motion capture studio where they're seeing each other, they're interacting with each other in person, saying their lines and going over their movements. That wasn't really done. Now, that's become sort of more standard, you know, especially with body scanning and facial scanning being as advanced and accessible as it is now. You just basically do what Kojima does. You scan in your actor and you just put literally the actor into the game. Silent Hill 2, the original, is one of the first games to really try to do something like that. Your characters resembled your actors. They were their movements. That was their voices. They're interacting with each other on a set, you know, on a stage while recording their voices and their movements. And they might not be the best performances in the world. Going back to the original Silent Hill 2, there's a lot of the performances that don't sound very good or very professional. They sound weird and strange and not in a like David Lynch intentional stilted way. There's a lot of stuff that is meant to be that way, but there's a lot of stuff that isn't. But those imperfections made everything feel more real. It made it feel like actual awkward conversations between people who seemed like they just woke up and they're still halfway dreaming. It was such a unique thing for the time. It was so advanced in the way that it utilized the PS2 hardware and the motion capture technology of the time. The subject matter of the writing, there's so much depth to it. There's so many details. You still have this open town, just like the original, with even more detail, even more things to look at, more internal dialogue and monologue from your protagonist when you examine things in the environment that made exploration 10 times more satisfying than in the original. It basically did everything the original did better, while pushing a lot of boundaries for the time that it came out. There's a reason that Silent Hill 2 Remake was a remake of this game and they didn't just start from Silent Hill 1. This game, the original game, is a work of art. It's S tier. Silent Hill 3. Silent Hill 3. S tier. I would also put Silent Hill 3 in S tier, just below Silent Hill 2. It is so close to being my favorite Silent Hill game. I would say if Silent Hill 1 and Silent Hill 3 were combined into a single game or end story, it would be the best. It would be above even Silent Hill 2. As it is, Silent Hill 3 feels a little bit disjointed, which is because so much of it relies on Silent Hill 1. But the things that Silent Hill 3 does do, I mean, talking about the visuals and how groundbreaking stuff was for Silent Hill 2, Silent Hill 3 took it even further. This is probably the best looking PlayStation 2 game. Like, there are very few PS2 games where you can play them today and still be like, wow, look at these fucking visuals. Look at these character models. Look at these face textures and these little subtle movements in character, their eyes, their mouths, all these little expressions, micro expressions. It's so stunning how good this game looks. they managed to take, like, all of the things that they did. Silent Hill 2 was them learning what they can do with the PS2 hardware. Silent Hill 3 is Team Silent being like, okay, we figured this shit out now. We know what we're doing to make games on the PS2. Moving translucent textures, bleeding and burning textures that crawl up and down the walls, or bleeding and moving textures that crawl all over Heather herself. Watching the transition, like Silent Hill 1 and Silent Hill 2, I think really struggled with blending your overworld turning into the other world. Usually, like, there needed to be a really harsh sort of cut point for now you're in the other world. You went through a door, you watched this cutscene, now you're in the other world. Silent Hill 3 managed to make it feel like it's actively happening to you while you play. It's so fucking good. It's so good with it, and the level of detail in the environment, 10 times more detailed than what they had in Silent Hill 2, and almost everything that is significant in the environment with all of those details, Heather will comment on it. The internal monologue of your protagonist is such an important thing for relating to them and understanding them as a character and kind of putting yourself in their shoes. And Heather is easily the most relatable character because there is so much dialogue. There is so much of her character in everything. Not just cutscenes, not just voice dialogue, but you can go and just look at anything in the environment. And even if it's something mundane, it's just a box on a shelf. You can't pick it up. It's not used for anything. Any other horror game would not even bother programming in some text. Something like Silent Hill 2 or whatever, even those games might just put like, oh, I don't need this right now. I have no use for this. Silent Hill 3, Heather will tell you what it is, how it makes her feel, and why it's no concern of hers. And give you a little snarky remark about it to remind you that she's like a 17-year-old girl. Over things that have no purpose being that detailed. It's bread, pastry fun tube. Even if you want to bring up like stuff like it's bread, that meme, I hate to kill the meme for everybody, Heather says additional things about the bread. She doesn't just say that. It's not like Silent Hill 1 when you examine the Bible in the Balkan church and Harry just says Bible. No matter how many times you examine it, no matter how many times you press the button, Harry will only say Bible. Heather says more about the bread. If you press X and continue on the dialogue, she continues talking about the bread. Even the meme joking about the succinct, cut down dialogue is not accurate because Silent Hill 3 is full of that extra dialogue. Absolutely packed with it. Even beyond that, item descriptions. Anything you pick up, anything that goes into your inventory, you don't just get a description of what it is. Heather tells you about what it is to her. It doesn't just tell you, oh, it's a switchblade. Here's my knife. She tells you that she's never had to use it before. She tells you that she carries around for protection, but has never had to attack anything with it. And then once you attack something with it, the description in the inventory changes. Because now she's had experience with it and her thoughts on it have changed. And they took the time to put text in the game to change the item description for an item after you use it versus before, because it changes how the character thinks about it. That is the level of detail Silent Hill 3 has over Silent Hill 2. There are a lot of things that Silent Hill 3 does that are better than the way they're done in 2. Like, 3 is absolutely insane when it comes to its details. The only thing that makes me put Silent Hill 3 below Silent Hill 2 is Silent Hill 2 is a self-contained narrative. You don't need to play anything else. You can just have Silent Hill 2 start to finish and get everything you need to get from it. Silent Hill 3, you don't have that. Silent Hill 3, you need Silent Hill 1 to appreciate it. Like, it sort of covers the important parts, right? Just so that the story will make sense for people who've played 3 and nothing else. You'll still get a complete story, but not really. Not really. It needs Silent Hill 1. That's the only thing that puts it kind of a step below Silent Hill 2, is it's not as self-contained. But from a gameplay standpoint, the controls, the puzzles, like, it feels better. The puzzles are clever, and they're smart, and they're satisfying to solve, except for Shakespeare, which is stupid and relies on information from outside of the game. Everything else is great. Silent Hill 3, absolutely amazing game. S tier. Silent Hill 4. B tier. Some people might be upset with this. Silent Hill 4 is B tier for me. And anybody who has watched me play Silent Hill 4, you probably already understand why. Because if this was not a tier list about video games, if this was a tier list about books, and we were looking at only the story for all of these things, if there was no gameplay or visuals or anything else attached to these, and they were just stories on a page, this would be up here. However, we're talking about video games. How you play them, and how they function, and how they are paced, and how they look, is what drops this to a B for me. If it was just a story, I would put it in S tier. It would be right up there with 2 and 3. Because the story of Silent Hill 4 is brilliant. Walter Sullivan is my favorite, absolute favorite antagonist of the entire series. He is such a... And this, by the way, Silent Hill 4, it is Walter's game. Walter's the main character. You play the game through Henry's perspective, but Henry is not the main character. Walter is. And I thought that was such an interesting way to tell a story. And for Silent Hill especially, to make the mass murdering cult member, like, you feel bad for him. And if you don't feel bad for him, you did not understand the story. I'm sorry. But it was really interesting. And it hits me in ways that other Silent Hill games just do not hit. The story is absolutely incredible. And I love the story of Silent Hill 4. I love the characters and the way they interact. Even Henry, a lot of people don't like Henry. He's very plain. It's kind of an everyman, but there is still a lot to Henry. The fact that he's been to Silent Hill before, he's a photographer, he's kind of comes off as, you know, being awkward or quiet or whatever as part of his character, sorry, I'm trying to focus on what I'm talking about while my wife is screaming and stomping in the other room. I think the cats are pissing her off. But yeah, the story, the setting, everything about Silent Hill 4, really, really good. Really good. The gameplay. Now, Silent Hill 3 and Silent Hill 4 were being developed side by side. There were less resources to go towards Silent Hill 4, less time, less budget compared to Silent Hill 3. And to me, that really shows in the game's design. They wanted to try some different things, and that's fine. Nobody expects the mechanics of a series to stay the same throughout an entire franchise. You know, things are going to change. Things are going to evolve. They wanted to try some different things. They wanted to have your recurring hub world, your apartment, act as this sort of reset point where you save, where you heal. You kind of have a moment to process things. And turning that against you as the game goes on. You know, cool concept. It's a neat thing. But having to backtrack and return as often as you do kills a lot of the pacing and the momentum of the game. And then they put all this emphasis on this hub world. Well, what's going to make the player go back to this hub world, this apartment that we spent so much time and effort on? So we limit the inventory. Here's your inventory chest. You can only hold 10 things in your inventory now, compared to 1, 2, and 3 having your typical horror protagonist infinite pocket. So now you kind of have this shoehorned mechanic that forces you back into this hub world. And again, when you're trying to just explore and enjoy a location, and it's like, shit, here's a thing, and I need that thing, but I've picked up these other things. Now I gotta go back. And then you gotta go through the process of getting back to a place so that you can get back to your room. And there's little cutscene, little loading screens and stuff in between. The whole openness of the environments that 1, 2, and 3 had become sort of known for, gone. Now we've got these little segmented chunks of maps again. A little more typical of stuff like Resident Evil. Same thing with your limited inventory. A little bit more Resident Evil-esque. These changes are not inherently bad, but the way Silent Hill 4 put them in just didn't feel like it had enough thought behind it yet. If they had more budget, more time to flesh out all of those ideas and mechanics to be a bit smoother in terms of pacing, motivation for coming back to the room, that sort of thing, I think they could have worked really well. Unfortunately, they just come off as really awkward. They tend to break up the enjoyment of the game. Like, every time I'm playing 4 and I'm just kind of getting into it, I'm like, shit, I gotta go back to the stupid room. Now, that becomes more interesting as the room starts to change. The second half of the game, you start getting the hauntings, and that aspect of it, I think, is really cool. Again, the idea of taking a place and making it feel like a safe place, and then turning that completely 180 and making your safe place haunted and hurt you instead of heal you. Really cool concept. But the pacing of the way it's handled just kills a lot of momentum when you just want that next story beat. Combat, there's a decent amount of weapon variety. I'll give Silent Hill 4 that. but using the weapons and the combat itself is very unsatisfying. And combat is not a big deal to me in Silent Hill games in general, but hey, we're talking about everything about these games and kind of my reasoning behind where I put it on the tier list. So the combat for Silent Hill 4, it sucks. It sucks. The charge up doesn't feel intuitive to use. Especially with the way most enemies are designed to be encountered in combat. Things are really fast in Silent Hill 4, except for you. The dogs move really fast. The ghosts can move really fast. The bugs can come at you really fast and then get away before you can hit them. And you're sitting there watching the little yellow circle charge up just so that you can swing and miss, or so that something can ignore you and just hit you anyway. How many times have you watched me do a story playthrough of Silent Hill 4 and I'm gushing about the characters in the story and all these little details, and then you watch me get stuck on Walter for the next hour? Because I'm like, this boss sucks. This combat sucks. His moves are bullshit. He ignores all these mechanics that don't even really work the way they're supposed to anyway. Silent Hill 4 is a game that I wish was a book. I wish I could just know the story and the characters without any gameplay attached to it. Because I love the story of Silent Hill 4, but I dread playing it. Even as somebody who's played it a million times, it's one of those games, like, there's very, very few, if any, parts of Silent Hill 1, 2, and 3 where I'm like, ugh, it's this part. There's about 60% of Silent Hill 4 where I'm like, ugh, it's this part. I gotta go up the stupid fucking escalators again. I gotta pin this stupid fucking ghost again. I gotta deal with this, stupid part right here because Eileen can't walk up this tiny little ledge. So I have to go through this whole stupid building, top to bottom, and go into my room and then come back and do this other stuff. Those are the parts where I'm like, God, I just want to enjoy it. And every time I start to enjoy it, the gameplay is like, fuck you. So, Silent Hill 4. Excellent story. Really rough gameplay. Really rough. Really, really rough. So it drops it down to a B for me. I said, maybe controversial. Serendipity. They just released a completed, preserved version of Silent Hill 4 on Good Old Games, which is cool, I think. Yes, while we're talking about Silent Hill 4, Good Old Games just updated it and fixed a lot of issues that the PC version has had since it came out in 2004. The Good Old Games version was already very good, but it was missing a few things. The PC version, not just Good Old Games, but even the physical PC release from back in 2004, had a lot of hauntings that didn't work. They were in the game files, but there was a bug in the code that prevented those hauntings from happening. So for a long time, people thought they were just missing or were removed from the PC version. Turned out it was just a bug. So the bug got fixed. Modders, fans, fixed it first. So there has been fan patches and fan mods for Silent Hill 4 PC that restore those hauntings and add other features. Good Old Games now has all of that baked in. It is part of Silent Hill 4. You don't have to mod anything. You don't have to download anything extra. You can just buy Silent Hill 4 on Good Old Games, and you get a solid PC port that runs at widescreen monitor resolutions with 30 to 60 frames per second, which it used to be 30 frame rate, 30 FPS gameplay, 15 FPS cutscenes in the original PC release in 2004. So, modern frame rate, modern resolution, hauntings restored. It is the version. If you're going to own Silent Hill 4 and play it today, Good Old Games is the way you should probably be doing it. You can also, of course, emulate PS2 version, or if you're lucky enough and wealthy enough to have physical hardware and stuff like that, of course, nothing beats that. But having the convenience of a PC port that's cheap, it's usually like $10 or less, with everything working the way it should be, nice. Go get Silent Hill 4 on Good Old Games. And they've also got a program where you can vote for other things, other games, to be part of this same preservation program. So let them know that you want them to do the same thing with Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill 3. Because both of those games have PC ports where fans have already done the hard work of fixing everything. They just need to be more available. So if we could get 2 and 3 to get the same treatment as 4 be available on Good Old Games, that would be a huge step for game preservation for the Silent Hill series. Silent Hill, the arcade. So Silent Hill, the arcade, as the name implies, is an arcade rail shooter, like House of the Dead, stuff like that, but themed around Silent Hill. I'm putting this in C tier along with Play Novel. It's definitely nothing special in terms of Silent Hill games. This is not like the hidden gem of the series. I will give it some points though. Now, first of all, I like rail shooters, and whether or not you like rail shooters will basically tell you everything about how you're going to feel about Silent Hill the arcade. If you like House of the Dead, and you were like, I wish House of the Dead had Silent Hill monsters and Silent Hill locations, you're going to love Silent Hill the arcade, because that's essentially all it is. If you love Silent Hill 1 through 3 and you're like, I love performances and story depth and character details and deep discussions around theories, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get that from Silent Hill the arcade. You're not going to get that aspect of a Silent Hill experience. I will give it some credit for the story and everything. It could have been anything, because it's a rail shooter arcade game. Put some Silent Hill locations in there, put some Silent Hill monsters in there. You don't even really need a story. A lot of arcade games don't even bother with much of a story beyond that. Just go. You're in Silent Hill. Go through these familiar places and shoot these familiar things. They put some effort into telling a story that ties into pre-established lore. And I'll give them credit for that. Because Silent Hill the arcade focuses around a ship that sank into Toluca Lake called the Little Baroness. And you learn about the Little Baroness in Silent Hill 2. There's a memo that you find in the prison that tells you about the Little Baroness and the mysterious things that happened around it. But there's pages torn out, so you only get part of the story. So the arcade game took that and basically said, let's fill in some of those missing pages. use the same concept, this historical event in the town of this ship sinking in the lake, and come up with a story behind it. Who were some of the people on that ship? What happened to it when it sank? And then how is that still affecting the town today, or during the events of the game? So you have your characters who are college students that are essentially history students, and they're going to Silent Hill to do research with the Silent Hill Historical Society. That is what the Historical Society is there for. Again, they're using established locations and they're given purpose to write a story around, give a reason for these characters to be there. They show up in Silent Hill, and then things happen. One of your main characters, Eric, is a descendant of the captain of the Little Baroness, and one of the students has a pen pal with a little girl who lives in Silent Hill, who is essentially possessed by a girl who died on the Little Baroness. So you're unraveling sort of the history of these characters and the ship and what happened. And I say unraveling very loosely because most of the game, you're not doing anything. You're just watching characters go, "Oh, there you are. Huh? A monster." And then you start shooting. And then I start blasting. That's like 90% of the cutscenes. Looking for friend? Hey, I found my friend. Oh no, there's monsters. Either save friend or friend dies. Move on. Next location. And it's just a big collection of places, familiar spots from the Silent Hill games. Some of them are spots that don't make sense, like the mall from Silent Hill 3. That's not in Silent Hill. I guess they forgot that Silent Hill 3, you don't go to Silent Hill until like a little after halfway through the game. And the first part of the game with the mall and everything, that's not part of Silent Hill. But it just shows up as a location in the arcade game because, hey, remember the mall? You know, it's that level of depth. You know, they were just getting whatever they could, whatever assets they already had, or whatever Konami would let them use, and making a little rail shooter around it. Again, it's middle of the road. I put it in C tier, similar to the Play Novel, where Play Novel is kind of the opposite. If you like the story and you just want some more Silent Hill story, the Play Novel's kind of interesting, but you're not going to get anything in terms of gameplay. Silent Hill the arcade, there's a little bit of story there. It's mildly interesting. Doesn't make the most sense, but hey, it's gameplay. You're shooting monsters and trying to keep up your shot combo and shooting extra things in the environment to find hidden items. It's got multiple branching pathways, so you can choose, like, which way do you go through the hospital? Are you going to go left? Are you going to go right? Or are you going to go through this middle door? Like, there's some replayability to it. If you like House of the Dead, if you like rail shooters, and you like Silent Hill, you'll probably have fun with this. But yeah, middle of the road, C tier. Silent Hill Orphan, also known as Silent Hill Mobile. A lot of people don't really know the Orphan games, or a lot of the Silent Hill mobile games in general. There's 4 of them. Orphan 1, Orphan 2, Orphan 3, and The Escape. Orphan 1 they're essentially slightly more than the play novel. Like, there's gameplay. It's essentially point and clicks on mobile phones. And when I say mobile phones, I mean like old mobile phones. Let me double check when Silent Hill Orphan first came out. It was 2007. So imagine, you know, phones in the early mid 2000s. It wasn't like today. Mobile games now are essentially rival like full console and PC games almost. Just because phones are more powerful and you can do so much more with them now. Back then, that was not the case. Like, it looks like a Game Boy Color game, at best. Similar to the play novel, they're more just about the story. It's a lot of text and with some puzzles. And the story is not great. It retcons quite a bit. There are recurring characters from the series, such as Vincent, who are featured in, and you get sort of like some backstory on characters. But it's not really anything substantial. Like, at its best, it's just kind of like inoffensive. And at its worst, it straight up changes and retcons things that are established in like Silent Hill 1 and Silent Hill 3. So there's not a whole lot to distinguish from the other Orphan games either. They're all kind of that same format, very text driven with some little puzzles. But they're essentially point and clicks, little point and clicks for your phone back in the day. All of these I'm going to put in D tier. That's all 3 Orphan games. I also had, I forgot their name, I'm so sorry. YouTube, I can probably pull it up real quick. Oddworld Maniac on YouTube actually left a comment 3 days ago and said, have you ever done any content on the Silent Hill Orphan games? They're the only Silent Hill games I've never played. They look bad, but I'm really curious about them. So I have played them. I didn't, full disclosure, I did not play them back when they came out. I didn't play them until I think around 2012 or 2013. I finally had an emulator, like a phone emulator and a PC that worked well enough to run it. When I finally got to play those games, I think originally that first one, and then a couple years later I found Orphan 2 and Orphan 3. So I've played them, but they're not anything I've ever made any videos on. I did a marathon where I was playing as many of the games as I could back in 2017, where I was going to include Orphan 1, 2, and 3 as part of that marathon. But my capture, like OBS would not capture the screen the way I needed it to. Like, nothing was working and I wound up skipping them. So eventually, one of these days, maybe I'll do a proper playthrough just to show everybody, they're nothing to write home about. D tier. D tier. Silent Hill Origins. Oranges. I feel somewhat conflicted on Oranges. This is one of the ones where I think my opinion on it has maybe changed the most over the years. PS2 or PSP? I mean, I don't want to get that granular about it because, yeah, I mean, there's visual and gameplay differences for sure, but I kind of want to talk about them both. You know, when I talk about each game, I'm taking all of its releases, all of its platforms into consideration. And before anybody says it, no, that does not include HD collection for 2 and 3. We're no. I so back back in the days when there weren't this many games, I used to really hate Origins. Because I loved Silent Hill 1. And I felt like Origins turning Alessa into this like little evil girl who has control over the other world rather than a victim of her mother and the cult and everything else left such a bad taste in my mouth. The retcons to the story and to the characters as they were presented in Silent Hill 1, to me, made me feel like Origins was just insulting. It was a slap in the face to anybody who appreciated Silent Hill 1. So I used to have a lot of disdain for Silent Hill Origins. I would say, given what I know now, in my years of experience continuing to play it and learning more about the history of the development behind it, which to me, in a lot of ways, is more interesting than the game itself. It's a miracle that Origins was released at all, in any state. Whether you like it or hate it, it is a small miracle that Origins even exists. Because this game, it started off as something entirely different, made by a completely different team. This is, you know, even though Konami by this point had already outsourced stuff like Play Novel, the arcade game, the Orphan games, Origins was the first like main entry that was outsourced to another company, and that originally went to Climax Studios in Los Angeles. And there's interviews and pre-alpha build footage and stuff like that out there online. But essentially, Origins was going to be an over-the-shoulder Resident Evil 4 action shooter, and the story was going to be a dark comedy that was loosely based on the TV show Scrubs. Climax Studios in Los Angeles basically worked on that build of Origins for about 6 to 8 months. And Konami was like, absolutely not. There's no way. Higher ups started looking at it, producers started looking at it, and they were like, no, this can't happen. This can't go out like this. So the entire project was scrapped and sent to Climax Studios. Climax LA, I think, closed, but Climax in the UK had another studio, completely different developers, different branch, So they ship the little scraps that they had made over to Climax in UK, and that is where Sam Barlow, the director, first saw that build. And he told Konami basically what they already knew. He's let me see if I can find like the actual interview. Because it's almost worth just reading what Sam Barlow said word for word rather than paraphrasing. Let's see. Okay, here it is. So this was a 2006, or excuse me, this was a later interview with Sam Barlow where he was talking about Silent Hill Origins. So Climax LA started making the action shooter dark comedy. That got scrapped. Project got handed off to Climax UK and team lead director Sam Barlow. Here's what Sam Barlow said about it. It was bizarre. It was supposed to be a dark comedy, and at some point, someone said Scrubs was the inspiration. We pushed back and said, look, if this goes out, it will be a disaster. There's a hardcore fan base of Silent Hill players. Konami responded and said, you can change everything, but you've got to do it in the same time and budget. So basically, they gave, Climax LA 2 years and, however much money, whatever their budget was, to make Silent Hill Origins. That first 6 to 8 months where they made the first version, all of that budget, all of that time, Konami said, you don't get that back. You can start over, but we're not giving you anything extra. So they had to make it with essentially half the budget gone, half the time frame for a deadline gone. And we got some more from Sam Barlow. Here's some more commentary from Sam Barlow. The first Silent Hill game we worked on, Origins, was started by a different group of people, and it was in a terrible state. When we took over, I think we had 6 months to finish it, and they'd already spent half the money. So we were told to just finish the thing. But me, and particularly the lead artist, Neil Williams, were thinking, aren't Silent Hill games usually really good? We didn't want to make the first bad Silent Hill game. Not just bad, but awful. Especially when it was supposed to be an origin story, which was a terrible idea, by the way. Even he didn't like the director of Origins agreeing that making a prequel to Silent Hill 1 was a bad idea. That's what's happening in this interview. The first Silent Hill already tells an origin story. We had very little room to maneuver, but we did our best. And part of doing our best was not in any way attempting to change the classic structure. The story would be told by the environment and through diaries. You'd feel like you were picking them up randomly and out of order, but it was clearly intended by us to deliver a certain emotional heft. We were locked into some cliché stuff when we started to work on the project. There was a level set in an asylum, but there was no reason for you to be there. You were just randomly walking through an asylum. We thought this location should probably tie into the character story, so we set it up so that the last piece of paperwork you find is a log of your mother being admitted there, and a doctor's note about how well she was doing. and suddenly it was so much more poignant. I enjoyed doing that. So that is Sam Barlow's own words, the director of Silent Hill Origins' own words. They had no time. They had no budget. They had a completely failed project that they couldn't use hardly anything from. And a premise that even the director did not want to do. And they still wound up making Origins. Now, I started this off saying I used to really hate Origins. After learning all of that, I kind of appreciate Origins in a different light. The fact that it was able to somewhat closely resemble a Silent Hill game, it's got those moments. It's got some camera angles and some Akira Yamaoka music, and it's got those brief moments where you're like, oh damn, I'm playing a Silent Hill game. It invokes the feeling of Silent Hill. Even if narratively it is very flawed, and I dislike it a lot still for those reasons, I don't hate it quite so much knowing how Sam Barlow felt about it and how much they were able to do with such a disaster of development. Any other game in the industry that would have gone through that much trouble would have just been trashed. It would have just been scrapped, and you never would have even known that it was in development in the first place. The fact that they were able to salvage that and still turn it into something like Origins as it is, I give them some credit for that. That said, I don't like Travis as a character. I don't like any of the way they portray Silent Hill 1 characters. Lisa and Kaufman and Dahlia, they're essentially completely different people. The town, it was interesting having familiar parts of Silent Hill 1 that were slightly changed and expanded on to let you see some couple extra streets and things that you didn't have access to, but other parts of the town that still felt familiar. Give them some credit for that. Really interesting range of unlockables, a lot of weapons and costumes. So yeah, it's got some stuff. It's not all bad. And it's kind of a small miracle that it even exists. If I had done this tier list, years ago before I knew what I knew now, I would have put this in like D tier. I would say it moves up to C tier for me. Just knowing the history of it and the director's feelings on it. So Origins, middle of the road. Some people like it. Some people don't. But hey, love it or hate it, it's a little miracle that it even exists. Silent Hill: The Escape. This was the other Silent Hill mobile game. So aside from the Orphan series, there was another Silent Hill game for mobile back in the day, Silent Hill: The Escape. Not to be confused with the slot machine that came out like 4 years ago called Silent Hill: The Escape. There's a slot machine called Silent Hill: The Escape. Not to be confused with the Pachi slot that's based on Silent Hill 2. We're just going down a whole rabbit hole of things that aren't even on this tier list. Because there's a Silent Hill 3 and Silent Hill Downpour themed slot machines. Yeah. A whole nother thing. Not to be confused with that, though. This was Silent Hill: The Escape. This was a game for cell phones back in the day. And I actually bought this game when it came out. I can remember I had just gotten a new cell phone. It wasn't crazy or anything, but it was like, you know, better than anything I'd had up to that point. And it could play games on it. So one of the first things I tried looking for was what Silent Hill games are available to download for this phone. And I came across Silent Hill: The Escape. So I'd actually bought and played this game on my phone back in the day. And it sucks. It's just very boring. It's really repetitive. All you're doing is going through mazes. It's a first-person perspective. And you're going through mazes, collecting ammunition and keys, and shooting nurses. And that's like all I can remember about it. Is just level after level after level. You go through the maze, you find the bullets, you shoot the nurses, you get the key, you go to the next level. It's like a worse version of Book of Memories in first person, where it's just essentially unrelated, and it's just super repetitive. Which, I mean, mobile games and handheld games kind of had that quality, especially back then. Nobody was expecting people to sit and play a game on their phone for more than a few minutes at a time. So if you're just sitting there and going through a level and, you know, whatever, killing 5 or 10 minutes while you wait for the bus or whatever the fuck, it's whatever. It's got Silent Hill nurses in it. I'm going to put this one in F, actually. I would still put Orphan above this. This is our first F. There's just so little to it. It's so insubstantial, non-substantial. One of those is a word, I'm sure. It lacks substance. And yeah, at the very least, the mobile games have some story, and it mentions characters and story points from the other games. Like, you don't even get that with Silent Hill: The Escape. Silent Hill: Homecoming. I very frequently, among Silent Hill fans on forums and on Reddit and stuff like that, very frequently I see people say that Homecoming is the worst game in the series. I don't like Homecoming, but I highly disagree. And I think that anybody who says that something like Homecoming is the worst probably hasn't played most of these. Or these. For me, Homecoming, God, it's frustrating. It's a frustrating game. It's one of those ones where you can see what they were going for, and with a few changes, it could have been something really, really good. They were going for, once again, a story that takes place away from the town. So you've got Shepherd's Glen, this town that was settled on the other side of Toluca Lake by a branch of the cult that broke away. it's a neat idea, but when you start going into the details, when you really start thinking about stuff, it really falls apart. Yeah, Rachel said it in chat. The logic behind the backstory is shit. It makes no sense at all. And that is definitely one of the biggest things. The core plot elements of Homecoming's story make zero sense. And it's just, yeah, it's frustrating because it's one where you can see what they were going for and you could change a few little things and kind of make it work. It's got some neat ideas. I like the idea of a town settled by cult members. You've got this sacrifice that you have to do to keep the town safe from sort of the darker side of Silent Hill's powers. You know, I like those general concepts, but then, okay, they gotta sacrifice someone in their family every 50 years. Well, you start thinking about that generationally, and it's like, wait a minute, so what happens when, like, it lines up so that your 50-year sacrifice hits and that person is like a grandma? Is it still them? What if they only have one child and the bloodline has to continue for there to be a sacrifice in another 50 years? Like, okay, the Shepherds have 2 kids, Alex and Josh, but like the Fitch family, Dr. Fitch only had 1 daughter. Wouldn't they have been fucked in another 50 years anyway? Like, you start breaking down the logic of all of it. The combat makes sense because Alex is a soldier. No, he's not. Oh, well, maybe his dad was a soldier, so maybe his dad trained him. Oh, except Alex was known from the time of his birth that he was going to be the Shepherd family sacrifice. It happens every 50 years. It's a specific day and time and method, so you choose who it's going to happen to. And the Shepherds chose Alex. Why would Adam Shepherd take the time to train his son, who is just a sacrifice in his eyes, to have any sort of skills? That was the whole plot of the game, was that they put everything, all the attention on Josh, because they knew Josh was supposed to be the one to carry on the family name. You have characters like Judge Holloway and Curtis. Yeah, Rachel brings up Curtis, who know what happened. They know who Alex is. They know what the Shepherd family was supposed to do. So Alex coming back should have immediately been like, red flags. What are you doing here? What's going on? Curtis gives him a functioning gun, which you can potentially kill Curtis with later on at the end of the game. Nothing makes sense. None of it makes sense. It's some cool ideas and concepts when you sort of isolate them, but when you try to connect it to everything else in the game, it completely falls apart. Gameplay is... It seems like it would be kind of fun at first, until you play it. It's like, okay, little bit more action. You've got light attacks and heavy attacks and blocking and dodging and parrying, essentially, by timing all of these things, and then hot swapping from your gun to your melee using the little D-pad shortcuts. And interesting idea in concept. And then you learn you can just bust out the knife and light attack everything to death. Just infinitely combo 90% of the game. Visually, it very heavily took inspiration from the Silent Hill movie. So yeah, another good point there, Legate. There's ash. There's ash falling from the sky when you get to Silent Hill. Because remember the movie? Remember the Silent Hill movie? Let's make Silent Hill the movie the game. Stuff like that is really just... it rubs me the wrong way. Going around just killing Order members, cultists, in mining outfits. Yeah. I will say, like dialogue is really bad. A lot of line deliveries are not good. Cutscene direction is very boring. It's very flat. Something that I complain about with Silent Hill 2 Remake, actually. One of my few complaints with Silent Hill 2 Remake. It feels a lot like watching Homecoming cutscenes, where the camera is very flat and boring for a lot of scenes. So just visually, it's very uninteresting. Maxi Lobes came in and said, PS3 version is also ass. I'm taking into consideration all versions, all platforms. But yes, 2 out of the 3 platforms for Silent Hill Homecoming are horrible to play. The PS3 version runs like crap, and the PC version barely runs at all. Like, I don't know if anybody can... Well, there's been a couple speedrunners who I know have done it, but it is almost impossible to get through the PC version of Homecoming without a crash. Even with fan-made patches and stuff, Homecoming on PC is like borderline unplayable. So yeah, it runs like crap. It runs fine on Xbox 360, and even better if you've got an Xbox One for backwards compatibility. It runs well on like Xbox Ones or Series S. But yeah, PS3 and PC versions are garbage. So the game just, it falls apart in almost every aspect. Which brings me to my next point. Something positive about it. The speedrun for Silent Hill Homecoming is my favorite speedrun in the series. If I was to only speedrun one Silent Hill game going forward, I would choose Homecoming. The speedrun for Homecoming is so much fun. The wall clipping and sequence breaking, like, because the game is barely stitched together, it makes the speedrun so interesting. It's really fun. It's really fun. And it's very satisfying when you learn how to do all of the skips and glitches and things in a Silent Hill Homecoming speedrun. Not glitchless. Glitchless is horrible and boring and stupid. But glitched runs, any percent runs, new game plus, whatever, they are so much fun. If you've never seen a Silent Hill Homecoming glitch speedrun, go look it up. They're awesome. They the way the sequence breaks work, essentially every wall is a suggestion. Once you have a gun, you can start just clipping through everything. Walls, objects, floors, everything. But a lot of times, the way the collision is set up, if you go through the wall the wrong way, you could just get stuck, or you'll fall through the ground and hit a death plane and die. So you can experiment like everywhere trying to clip, but then you have to narrow it down into like what actually works and allows you to still progress and keep playing. And it's made the routing for Homecoming super interesting, especially from category to category. New Game is not like New Game Plus. Any percent is not like all bosses. They all have their own routes with their own tricks and their own clips. And the method of clipping, it used to be strafing back and forth and aiming your gun repeatedly so that you would aim at a particular direction with enough momentum to start clipping into a wall, and then adjust your camera and position so that the wall pushes you through to the other side. Newer methods, you actually hot swap between weapons, like the knife and the handgun, or the handgun and the shotgun, to do that same thing but even faster, so that you can do it without strafing and getting that momentum. It is one of the hardest things to learn. There's so many speedrunners who run a lot of really high level, very technical games and speedruns that don't like running Homecoming or drop it very quickly because your hands start to cramp while you're sitting trying to figure out how to clip through a wall for hours on end. It takes a lot of initial investment of time and practice to learn how to do the clips, let alone do them quickly in a run all together back to back. And when it all comes together, when you finally sort of understand how it works and can do it consistently, it is one of the most satisfying feelings that I've ever gotten when speedrunning a game. And I speedrun all the games. I speedrun all the Silent Hill games. I speedrun a lot of stuff outside of Silent Hill. Homecoming is one of the most satisfying speedruns. The effort that you put into it to do those clips shows, and it feels good to do. And to me, those are the best kind of speedruns. I love broken games in terms of speedruns like that, where the run itself is still substantial, but the sequence breaks and things like that make it interesting. And then the method of doing that is satisfying to execute. So it's a perfect storm of speedrunning stuff. I love speedrunning Homecoming. It's a shame it's such a bad fucking game otherwise. But this one, I think, goes into C tier along with Origins. This is another one where if I was not a speedrunner, this would probably be D. But because I speedrun it and I have a lot of appreciation for how good of a speedrun it is, I'm putting it in C tier. I would say, I guess let me arrange these. I would put this about here for C tier. Silent Hill Shattered Memories. This was the second game developed by Climax UK, directed by Sam Barlow. So Silent Hill Origins was, here is what Climax UK and Sam Barlow can do to clean up another studio's mess and still manage to turn out something that's okay. Shattered Memories was their chance to make almost what they wanted to make. And I say almost because Shattered Memories also has a bit of a rocky development history. So Shattered Memories originally started with Sam Barlow wanting to make a game called Bram's PD. It was going to be based on the police department where Sybil Bennett works, in the neighboring town of Brams, next to Silent Hill. And you were going to be playing as a police officer suffering from PTSD and having these traumatic flashbacks in nightmarish Silent Hill fashion while they spoke to the police therapist. So that was the original concept, was Bram's PD. This idea got pitched, and Konami said no. And Sam Barlow said, okay, let's make something a little more traditional Silent Hill, but still kind of keep the same concept. Attempt number 2, pitch number 2, was Silent Hill Cold Heart. And there actually is the leaked pitch document for Silent Hill Cold Heart out on the internet if you want to look that up. It's on silenthillmemories.net and a bunch of other places out there. Just look for Silent Hill Cold Heart and you can find it. But Silent Hill Cold Heart, they took the same concept of somebody suffering from PTSD and having these therapy sessions that triggered into, back and forth between therapy sessions and gameplay, exploring the character's trauma, except it was set in Silent Hill. It had a female protagonist. So you had these interesting ideas that their concept for Bram's PD kind of repackaged into a little more, I guess, typical Silent Hill setting. Konami once again said no. And at this point, Sam and his team, according to interviews with him, at this point, Sam and his team started getting frustrated. They were like, we've got this idea. We know it's good. We know we can make something cool with these things that we've come up with. We just need to get Konami to greenlight it. And for whatever reason, they are just not giving us any green lights. So Sam did a little bit of digging into all of the internal documents that Konami already had greenlit. Because a lot of times, companies like Konami and Capcom, they don't just immediately produce everything that gets a green light to go into production. Sometimes they just greenlight a concept to let it sit on a shelf for a different time or the right studio or whatever. So Sam Barlow basically went and looked through everything that Konami had already greenlit. And one of the things that was already greenlit sitting on the shelf was, and remember, this is back in like 2007, a Silent Hill remake. Konami had already approved the concept of a Silent Hill remake as far back as 2007. And Sam Barlow looked at that and he said, well, what if we make the game we want to make? But we tell Konami that it's a Silent Hill remake. We tell them that we're making a remake. And they give us the green light. We start production. We make the game that we want to make. And we just make it resemble a remake just close enough that Konami doesn't pull the plug on it. Konami already gave the green light, so Sam's idea went through, and they started production on Silent Hill Shattered Memories. The not really a remake, but close enough to get the green light and still make the game they wanted to make. Somebody suffering from PTSD, seeing a therapist, and cutting back and forth between the therapy segments and the gameplay, the concept of having the game change as the player played based on their choices and answers during the therapy segments and how they explored the environments. All of those original concepts got wrapped up in a nice Silent Hill 1-esque coat of paint. So, anybody who has played Shattered Memories, it is not Silent Hill 1. And if you've never played Shattered Memories and you think, oh, I'll just play this instead of playing Silent Hill 1, you can't do that. They're completely different. Character names are the same. That's about it. So, another really interesting bit of development history for Shattered Memories. And then the game itself. The idea that everything is Cheryl. It is Cheryl going and seeing Kaufman, who in this scenario is a therapist, working on the childhood trauma of her father, Harry Mason, dying in a car crash when she was only 7 years old. Some people consider this to be like the continuation of the bad ending in Silent Hill 1. Silent Hill 1, if you get the worst ending, essentially, you learn that everything in the game was just happening in Harry's mind as he was dying in his car, and then he dies in the car crash. Now, it doesn't exactly work. Kaufman is still a completely different character. Dahlia is a completely different character. The cult doesn't exist. So you can't really make Shattered Memories work as like a continuation of Silent Hill, even a bad ending continuation. But it still sort of plays with that idea as a jumping off point to tell its own story. It makes Harry a really interesting character, multifaceted. You sort of still treat him like world's best dad, but it also shows you that he's a human and he has flaws and he has problems, sometimes very, depending on your ending and everything, really fucked up things about him. But I like getting that view of Harry Mason as this sort of character. You know, your protagonist with a dark side, not quite to the level of Silent Hill 2 being, you know, I murdered my wife type of thing, but maybe he cheated on his wife. Maybe he was not, you know, as attentive to his family as he should have been because he was always drunk, you know, that sort of thing. I like that they give these characters, somewhat familiar characters, some humanity and realistic flaws. What a lot of people, I think, mostly don't like about Shattered Memories is the gameplay. It's the complete opposite of the direction they were trying to go with stuff like Origins and Homecoming. Where it's like, yeah, let's make Travis so that he can throw fists. Let's make Alex this action star with all of these combos and moves. Shattered Memories, no combat. No combat, which was a huge problem for a lot of people. I, as somebody who's never cared about combat in the Silent Hill games, you know, beyond like a very surface level, did not mind this change at all. I liked the chase sequences. I liked the running segments. Remember, this is back in like 2009 when that trope hadn't been completely beaten to death yet. You had your like amnesia and a couple things like that. But the idea of you're playing somebody who cannot fight, they have to run, they have to hide, and rely on other things to survive. I liked that idea, and I thought that worked really well for a Silent Hill story. And the thing that I like, one of the aspects that I like the most about Silent Hill games is the exploration. Being able to look through an environment and find details and find interesting things to analyze and discuss. Shattered Memories has so much of that because the game's core mechanics revolve around it. It's counting on you to explore and to look at things, and will then alter and change the game as you're playing it based on what you stop and look at, what you stop and analyze. That core mechanic taking one of my favorite things about the series and making it a core mechanic of the game that adds replayability. Shattered Memories is the only Silent Hill game, and I've bought almost every single game on launch. Shattered Memories is the only one where I bought it on launch, I took it home, I played all the way through it, and then immediately one of my friends sat and also played all the way through it. We basically stayed up for like, this is before I was streaming, but it was essentially the way my streams were. We stayed up for like 20 hours just playing Shattered Memories. And then my friends went home and went to sleep, and I played it again because I was so interested in answering Kaufman differently and then seeing what changed, looking at something differently and seeing what changed, seeing the different things that Harry would say, seeing the different things that Sybil would say, all the different phone calls you get, all the different text messages you get, you know, all the different interactions with Kaufman during the therapy segments. There was so much to it, and so many variables and variations on like all these little things. I was like, this is so cool. It was such a cool idea. The story itself was satisfying and emotionally moving. And I mean, I should point out my own personal bias. Everybody has their own personal biases for one reason or another. I have many biases when it comes to Silent Hill. I've been playing the games. Like, the first game came out, I played it when I was 11 years old. You know, probably too young to be playing horror, but again, I was a little horror fan even from the age of like 5, 6. You know, very young, I've had an affinity towards horror. And I'm very biased because I was at very formative years in my life playing the original 4 games as they came out. And also, the way that we relate to the characters has a lot to do with our own personal lives, what we've gone through as people, and how it relates to characters in the games. So, for somebody who maybe is older and was married and had a wife or a husband or a significant other who's gotten sick, who's had to go through what that feels like, you're probably going to resonate really strongly with something like Silent Hill 2. we're going to get somewhat personal with me here for a little bit, but this is stuff I've talked about on stream before. My father, my biological father, was murdered when I was a teenager. And it was a very obviously difficult thing for me and for my mom, and especially at that time in our lives, because before that, my dad wasn't around a whole lot. He was in and out of jail, and not for anything. He was not a bad person, but he had his people in his family were bad people. People not in our family, but on his side of the family. People we didn't really, like me and my mom, didn't really interact with, but his brothers and uncles and people in his side of the family were involved in gangs and some really bad stuff. And my dad, just being a member of the family, unfortunately got wrapped up in a lot of it, even though he wasn't doing any of that stuff himself. And because of that, he was in and out of jail a lot, and it was something that for me as a kid was always difficult trying to deal with. And it's a lot to spend years writing letters to your dad knowing, okay, 2 more years he's going to get out, 1 more year he's going to get out, 6 more months and I'm going to have my dad back. Dad gets out, and people involved with rival gangs related to, the family murdered him. And then Silent Hill 3 came out about 1.5 years later. A game about a teenage girl whose father was murdered. And that was probably the moment where Silent Hill really elevated in my eyes. Because I realized it's not just telling stories that deal with really heavy subject matter. It's telling them in ways that are relatable, realistically. It was one of the first times where I was able to compare things in my life to events in fiction like that, or to characters like Heather, where I'm like around the same age, dealing with the same things, so that anger that Heather has towards Claudia, thinking that somebody out there took someone from you, and you just, all you want is like to hurt that person that hurt you, that took someone from you. And then sort of the emotional realization that you can't, and that you just have to deal with it. But especially at that age, as a teenager, like, you don't have the control over yourself, over your emotions, over how you react to those things. So even though, a lot of people talk about Silent Hill 3 and how it maybe resonates to different people because of sort of the feminine horror, quality of horror that goes into it, even though I didn't relate to it on that level, I related to it on the level of a teenager who had their father taken from them at somebody else's hand, and how unfair it all felt, and what it's like to have to deal with that afterwards. Shattered Memories. I kind of went off on a tangent about Silent Hill 3 there, but Shattered Memories revisits this idea, this concept, and contextualizes it in a completely new way. It's one of the only Silent Hill games that brought me to tears. Shattered Memories is A tier. Your experience may vary. I know I just had to give a lot of personal history there, but I needed everyone to understand, beyond just what makes Shattered Memories a good game, what makes it so important to me personally. Even without that emotional bias and attachment to it, this is still just, in a vacuum, an excellent game. Very well written, tons of replayability if you like looking for little differences and changes, a lot of different endings, some really great tongue-in-cheek joke stuff and references. Amazing, amazing game, even just on its own. Silent Hill Downpour. Similar to Homecoming, I see a lot of people say that this is the worst Silent Hill game, or mainline Silent Hill game. I've got a lot of problems with Downpour. As a game, just strictly from a gameplay standpoint, try to remove the characters and the story and everything else. There's things I like about it. The idea of the big open Silent Hill with little side stories and quests and things that you can go off and do. I love my exploration, but what Downpour misses is making that exploration feel rewarding, making it feel justified for the time you spent exploring and doing the side quests. Downpour, out of all of its little extra things you can do, achieves that once, maybe twice, if you really are stretching. Like, the majority of the little side quests have nothing to do with Murphy or the story or anything at hand. Very little of it is satisfying, like, to solve. Um, Most of it's very simple stuff. Interact with this thing and then kill the enemies that show up. Then interact with this other thing and then kill the enemies that show up. The alarm is going off in the bank. Enemies are showing up. I just spent 2 full clips of ammo and 3 health kits fighting off these enemies, and then I get the code to the safe and it gives me 1 clip of ammo and 1 health drink. Like, fuck, I just spent more than that doing the quest. That's 90% of the side quests. Then you've got a couple of them that are okay. The theater one, which is actually like tied into the story. It's Murphy's house. It's going over things that happened in his past. You're getting little clips of stuff going on. Like, there's 1 or 2 that are like okay. Little bit more relevant and satisfying, or have like a decent reward. The majority of them are just pointless. They don't add anything to the game. They don't add anything to the story. They pad out your gameplay hours. As far as characters and story goes, I am now, this is maybe just a personal preference, but I don't like open-ended narratives that the conclusion retroactively changes the story. So the Silent Hill games, for the most part, like, they've always done multiple endings, and the multiple endings have always been different ways to wrap up the same story. Silent Hill 2. Every ending of Silent Hill 2 does not take away, what James has done, or the events leading up to the start of the game, or the experience that you just had going through the game yourself. None of those endings take any of that away from you. Downpour completely recontextualizes the story based on your ending, to the point of being completely nonsensical. And even one of the game's directors, like Tom Hewlett, lead producer, said that was a mistake, that certain endings were supposed to be done differently, but didn't get changed in time for the release. So instead, what we did get are just a bunch of random things that happen. It's like, okay, Murphy, he went to prison because he wanted to go to prison. So what did he do to go to prison? Okay, he steals a cop car and leads him across a 10-hour multi-state chase. Well, why would he do something so desperate to get arrested on purpose? Well, he wants to go to prison because the man who killed his son is there, and he wants revenge. Okay, I'm following. I'm on board. So you sort of go through the game under these ideas, this pretense that Murphy is this flawed protagonist who's done something horrible, and he hasn't even necessarily blocked it out. He doesn't really have like the amnesia or anything that you get with a lot of the the sort of trope that wound up becoming overdone after Silent Hill 2. He's aware of everything. So he's going through the game constantly talking about how he's aware of it and how he feels about it. He goes on a whole rant with the nun lady in the church about what I did to Napier didn't change anything. That's me on the table because I'm the boogeyman, because I killed a man. And then you get to the endings, and he didn't. So, what was all the whining for, Murphy? What was all the guilt? What was the point? Everything that was established about the character has just been undone. And it just makes you not care. It makes me not care. Like, how can I care about what Sewell did if the ending changes whether or not Sewell did anything? What about the end? Yeah, there's an ending where Anne is the prisoner and Murphy's the guard. Okay. There's an ending where Murphy is on getting the death penalty while his wife watches. Officer Sewell is there, just doing his job, apparently like not a bad guy. Murphy's the bad guy, which also clashes with information that you were given about his character while you played through it. It makes everything that you experience feel pointless. Because if the game can just change what the narrative is, then who cares? Who cares about any of it? How are you supposed to accept any of it? So I think, like, narratively, Downpour could have been something interesting. The premise is there, but it needed to commit to its storyline. It needed to have a definitive, here is who Murphy is. Here is what he's done. Here is who Anne Cunningham is. Here is what she's done. And those things needed to stay, regardless of what ending or outcome you get. So, storyline-wise, everything falls apart. Character-wise, I can't enjoy or relate to any of the characters because who they are and what they've done and what their motivations are completely change. And then you have the comic book, which the comic book, if I was just rating the comic book would probably be like an A or a B on this list. The comic book is everything that Downpour should have been, which is ironic considering the comic book is essentially cut content that was made into a comic book. So for those who don't know, there's a comic book that went along with Downpour, or it came out like 4 years after Downpour, really. It was written by Tom Waltz, who was one of the lead writers for the game. So it's still the same writer talking about the same story, but the name of the comic is Anne's Story. It's a comic book all about everything going on in Downpour from Anne Cunningham's perspective. Tom Hewlett said on Twitter many years ago that when Downpour first was in development, they were going to make it sort of like Resident Evil 2, where you would have an A and B scenario. You'd play for a little bit as Murphy, and then you'd play for a little bit as Anne Cunningham. He even wanted to have multiplayer at one point in development, where you would have two people playing both characters for certain things simultaneously. All of that idea, all of those things got scrapped, and Anne's scenario basically got written as a comic book, made into a comic book. And it contextualizes everything and makes everything so much better. If you ignore all of the alternate endings to Downpour and you just go off of the comic book and the way the comic book ends, it makes way more sense. It makes you enjoy the characters more for understanding them better. Like, it makes everything make sense. But it's in a fucking comic book that came out like years after the game, that 99% of the people who played the game have probably never even read. So, Downpour. Downpour is a D. For the sake of, I also brought up stuff like speed running, for Homecoming. I also speedrun Downpour. Downpour is so boring. Unskippable cutscenes. Just running from point A to point B. Very little, tech. There's no, satisfying execution to be had. Now, I would say it's better than these. It's better than the mobile games. But I would put it just below Origins here, in D tier. Neon Umbra says, I'm sorry, no offense, but you're misunderstanding a lot of what actually happened in the story. No offense, but I've played the game and analyzed it. I mean, even just on stream, let alone all the times off stream, with like the comic book in hand. Maybe I'm not claiming to be a genius who absolutely understands everything, but I've made the effort to play and understand Downpour a lot more than most people probably would have. But that's a discussion for another stream, because we're moving on to Silent Hill Book of Memories, something else that I am confident I have more experience with than you. My main reason for that being I currently still have the only all 500 zone playthrough that is available to view anywhere. I spent years playing Silent Hill Book of Memories every Monday. And even outside of those Mondays, I played it for story playthroughs. I played it for marathons. I played it casually with my wife. And I've played every single zone, all 500 zones in this game. I've seen every bit of dialogue, every cutscene, you know, used every weapon and picked up every artifact. Book of Memories. Let's put it this way. I've only ever destroyed one Silent Hill game. I've only destroyed a single Silent Hill game in my collection. And it was Book of Memories. When I finished all 500 zones, I set my cartridge on fire. I melted it into goo in a Silent Hill candle. Book of Memories is F tier. I'll put it above Silent Hill The Escape because I guess it's got, like, I don't know, the joke ending is kind of funny. Not really. It's got references in it. Book of Memories is horrible. It has essentially nothing to do with Silent Hill. It's a dungeon crawler for the PlayStation Vita. And I need everyone to understand, it's not just because it's a dungeon crawler Silent Hill game. I like dungeon crawlers. I'm willing to play Silent Hill games that are not just straight up survival horror, you know? The genre does not make it bad. The fact that it's bad makes it bad. Most dungeon crawlers have, like, satisfying mechanics as you progress through levels and level up and find new weapons and level up your skills or find new equipment. All of that dies off in Book of Memories almost instantly. Like, it's hard to put into words how much they got everything wrong. Like, as an RPG, you know, you make your character, you choose your stats, you level up, and you adjust what stats level up, like Dark Souls, you know? Imagine playing Dark Souls or like something similar, where you've got a character that you make and you give them skill sets and build those skill sets around certain weapons, and stats do certain things, you know? So you would expect like your strength stat makes you hit harder with melee weapons. Well, Book of Memories, your strength stat raises how hard you hit with certain weapons, because not every melee weapon is a melee weapon. Some of them are wild card weapons, which scale on a completely different stat. Some of them are just not considered a weapon type at all and function entirely different from everything else. You might think like, oh, here's a status effect, right? Anybody who's ever played an RPG, if you played Final Fantasy, if you played anything like that, you know how status effects work, right? Poison. If you've played an RPG and you get poisoned, what would you say happens to you? Damage over time. Usually a small amount of damage ticking over like a certain amount of time. Almost every RPG, almost any game that has any sort of poison does that. Book of Memories. When you get poisoned, do you know what poison does? Poison checks your intelligence stat for a certain percentage and then reduces your HP by the remaining percentage. What that means is, if you put 10 points into your intelligence so that you've got 1% resistance, that means that you have about 1 second of interacting with poison before it interacts with you. And once it interacts with you, it takes the remaining non-resisted percentage. So again, 10 points of intelligence is 1%. So the other 99% of your health goes away. Goes away. Not ticks down incrementally. I mean, it's fucking gone. Which means the next thing that touches you kills you. In a dungeon crawler where there are constantly things around you. Things that have ranged attacks that can throw a knife at you from off screen. Yeah, and then Rachel brings up a good point. Even if you max out your stats, your intelligence, your vitality, and everything, once you get beyond a certain point, because the game constantly scales up, it doesn't scale with you, it scales with your zone. So if you keep progressing through zones, you will eventually get to a point where even with maximum stats, almost everything in the game will kill you in one hit anyway. Like, I cannot stress enough how fundamentally wrong Book of Memories is. And we're just talking about gameplay. We haven't even talked about the story. The story is the worst part. Book of Memories is my favorite thing to talk about for the Silent Hill fan that says anything that Konami publishes is canon. If you are the Silent Hill fan who thinks and says that everything, if it's got a Konami stamp on it, sorry, it's canon. It says Silent Hill on it. It's from Konami. It's canon. If you are that person, let me explain Book of Memories to you. Every single thing that happened in every single Silent Hill game happened because somebody wrote it down in a book of memories. That's it. That's the entire series summed up, if you think Book of Memories is canon. Because you find notes in Book of Memories where Claudia wishes that Alessa would come back. So that's why Silent Hill 3 can happen. You get a note from Alex Shepard where he wrote in a Book of Memories and said, "I wish I could have been Dad's perfect little soldier." You have James writing in a Book of Memories that he wishes he could have had, you know what I'm saying? Every game, every single one. If you think Book of Memories is canon, then all of them can be explained the same way. Somebody wrote in a Book of Memories, this should happen. And so it happened. Isn't that interesting? Now we don't have to debate. Now we don't have to analyze anything any deeper in Silent Hill ever again. Isn't that fun? I'm out of a job. Everything is just from a Book of Memories. Any question you have about anything happening in Silent Hill, someone wrote it in a Book of Memories. And even the concept for how that works makes no fucking sense in the context of just Book of Memories by itself. Because the way they explain it is you open up your Book of Memories, right? So let's say the way the game starts is your character didn't get a promotion at work. One of your coworkers got the promotion instead of you. So you go into your Book of Memories and you write, "I wish I got the promotion instead of Derek." You don't choose to write this. Your character just does it, by the way. It's just part of the story, the narrative, to move Book of Memories forward. The way the game explains what's happening is you write down, "I wish I got the job instead of Derek." And then you go to sleep. And when you go to sleep, you go inside the mind of somebody else. In this case, Derek, your coworker. And by playing through the dungeon, which represents their mind, and then defeating the boss at the end of the dungeon, which represents their will, you change their will so that reality follows suit. Except that's not how reality works. That's only how a single person's perspective works. So even if that worked the way the game says it does, Derek would wake up and say, "Oh man, the other person got the job." But you would still go to work the next day. Your boss would still know who they gave the promotion to. Your coworkers would still know. Who cares if you went into Derek's brain and killed his tree monster to affect his will? That wouldn't change anything except for Derek's perspective on reality. So if you could argue that the book takes it and makes it real, why would it only take from that mind? Couldn't your own will simply be used through the magic of the book? And they try to address that as one of the endings. Just... what? None of it works. None of it works. The story's bad. Story's bad. Characters are dumb. It fails as an RPG. It fails as a dungeon crawler. It fails as a Silent Hill game. Book of Memories. F tier. PT, the playable teaser for the unreleased Silent Hills, made by Hideo Kojima. This is a tough one, because you need to remember, we're not ranking Silent Hills. Silent Hills doesn't exist. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about PT is that PT is a demo for Silent Hills. It is not. It is not. A demo, or a demonstration, is a little piece of a game that exists. You play the demo for Silent Hill 1, and it's the intro, or like a little piece of Midwich. It's a little piece of an overall game. It's a little piece to represent what the overall game is. PT is not that. PT is exactly what it's named. It is a playable teaser. It's a standalone puzzle that Hideo Kojima made for people to solve. And if you solve it, you get to watch the teaser trailer for Silent Hills. So Silent Hills was going to be something completely different. It was not going to look or play anything like PT, if it had come to exist. PT was not a little piece of it. It was just a standalone thing. This is also the first time that Hideo Kojima, who, longtime Konami employee, director, obviously at the Metal Gear series and everything like that. This was Kojima's first time kind of jumping into horror and Silent Hill. And I gotta say, in terms of like how scary something is, PT, it's very short. It is just a playable teaser. It's this little standalone thing, so it's not super deep. It does have a little story to it. And even that little bit of story is interesting, with some depth, to look at things a little more than what's there on the surface, which is impressive considering how small and unrelated PT is. And for being such a limited, small thing, essentially just one hallway, it manages to do such a good job with the environment, with the sound design. Lisa and Sink Baby, if you would consider those creature design, are outstanding. Like, Lisa is genuinely gruesome and hard to look at. Eraserhead Baby is disturbing. Sink Baby, everything in PT is so just overbearing scary. Like, it is really impressive how much horror got compressed into this little thing, into this little playable teaser. With that said, I would say the style of horror is not really Silent Hill. It's pretty distinct in the way it handles horror compared to other Silent Hill titles. And I think a lot of that is just because it is Hideo Kojima. Kojima has never been one to follow trends. He doesn't like trying to do something that other people have already done. He likes to be very unique, and he likes to do things his own way. There's a big part of why he's not at Konami anymore. And I think that really shows through PT. He managed to take something like Silent Hill and break it down into some really core components, so much so that it doesn't even really resemble Silent Hill. But it's still so good. It's still so scary and evocative. And honestly, PT, I would say I put up here just because it's heartbreaking and it's short. It's not as, fleshed out as a full game. I would put it in A. It's up there though. This is so again, by the time PT came out, I'm already a well-versed horror veteran, to the point where like I don't consider things to be scary. Like media and fiction does not scare me generally. Most games, most movies, whatever. Like I don't get scared from that type of stuff. PT, there is nothing like that first time playing PT. Like, even for somebody like me who experiences a lot of horror, plays a lot of horror games, watches horror movies, immerses myself in horror, PT's a game that will still make you fucking jump. Like it, and not just jump scare, but the build up to make the jump scare work. The tension of everything is done so fucking well. So fucking well. It's heartbreaking that we never got to see Silent Hills and that Kojima never got to really follow up on this. I still am waiting for Kojima to kind of give us a full-on horror game. We get a little bit of that from like Death Stranding, and I have to say, as much as I love PT, as heartbroken as I am for its removal and Silent Hills cancellation, we would not have gotten Death Stranding without that, and I absolutely adore Death Stranding. Can't wait for Death Stranding 2 as well. But I love that game, and there's so much of Death Stranding that clearly would not have been that way if not for Kojima sort of doing some things in PT first. So, yeah. It's up there. PT, A tier. Silent Hill Ascension. It's arguable if this is even allowed on this list. This doesn't even really deserve to be on here. In terms of being a Silent Hill game, like, no. You strummed fucking virtual guitar strings while Akira Yamaoka music played in bad quality. Like, you played fucking Bejeweled. That was the game. That was the interactive part. So, in terms of interactivity and gameplay, it doesn't even deserve to be here. The play novel has more gameplay, and it's mostly a book. Now, in terms of Ascension, outside of just the glaring obvious, it's not a game, we do have to go through the process of breaking down what it is. And that is a scam. This was a scam for Genvid to raise money to make more projects like it. And it's not even the first time they've done it. They did it with The Walking Dead on Facebook before Ascension, with all the exact same mechanics. Viewers could spend money to get influence points, to vote on things, and then watch a scene. Watch a couple minutes of a scene every day. They did the exact fucking thing. Exact same fucking thing with The Walking Dead. It failed. They managed to somehow get Konami to give them money for Silent Hill Ascension. And now, I don't even think Ascension was successful. I can't imagine it was. I can't imagine it made them money. But somehow GenVid still exists. They're still making these. They're called Massive Interactive Live Experiences. Miles, M-I-L-E. They just made one for the Justice League. And they're already working on another one based on Borderlands. So you've already got Justice League Ascension and Borderlands Ascension. But anyway, Silent Hill Ascension. It was literally a scam. I spent $20 of one of my moderator's hard-earned dollars to get the season pass for Silent Hill Ascension so that we could like get extra stuff. You get like extra things to dress up your avatar, because you could make your own avatar. And sometimes your avatar could enter into a drawing and show up in the show. Except for when they started editing out people's avatars when they post the full episodes on like Tubi, and sometimes even on their own platform. They would re-upload the episode, or basically you'd get it scene by scene throughout the week, and then they'd put up a full episode each week, and they would go back and change the people who won the drawing and showed up in the episode. So even if you spent the money, even if you won the drawing, they could just fucking take it away. They could just change it. All of the voting outcomes, we saw literal evidence where a vote went one way, but they already had assets set up for the winning vote scene for the following day. They already had a fucking thumbnail for a vote that hadn't even gone through yet. The entire gimmick of audience participation to like direct the story was all complete bullshit. Everything that they marketed this as was a complete lie. It didn't do any of the things they said it was going to do. It was literally a scam. The story itself, we kept up with it. I followed it every single day for the first month. And then after that, I would still go back and do recaps until the entire thing finished. We watched every single episode of Ascension multiple times. I've gone through it as deeply and as analytically as I tend to go through anything else Silent Hill. And outside of the name Silent Hill Ascension, there is no Silent Hill. You never go there. No one ever goes there. Nobody is from there. They never say the words Silent Hill in the entirety of Silent Hill Ascension. The closest you get is when somebody's cell phone rings and you get to hear a second and a half of Akira Yamaoka music. And I'm not joking. That's like the deepest reference that you got, was somebody's cell phone would ring and their ringtone was like a Yamaoka song. This is at the bottom. Anybody who tries to say Ascension, oh, Book of Memories is worse, Homecoming or Downpour is worse, nothing is worse than this. I'm sorry, you're objectively wrong. Nothing is worse than this. It doesn't even really deserve to be on the tier list, but if it's going on the list, it's going at the bottom. Complete scam. Not Silent Hill at all. Waste of time. Waste of money. At least we got a couple of funny moments out of the streams. Like, the month where I was following Ascension was so fucking boring. Like, if I was only covering what was going on in Ascension by itself, it would have been miserable. I had to go out of my way to try to do other things to make that month interesting so that people would still watch my stream. Because I was so worried that if I was like, after the first couple days, I was like, if all I do is watch this and talk about how bad it is, nobody is going to be watching my stream. Nobody's going to want to follow this. I don't want to follow it, let alone anybody else who's just going to watch me. So I started like writing skits and having my friend join me for like podcast discussions and making like memes and games, and I made a mock website. I made my own ripoff version because Genvid, they call those massive interactive live experiences miles. So I made a website called Nile, Nile, the Nubzombie interactive live experience. Like, we have scam points. You see how people are redeeming scam points? We have scam points. I've never had channel points before Silent Hill Ascension on my channel. I added scam points because I thought maybe if people have something to play with, they'll stick around despite this boring, awful show. I desperately was trying to find things to be funny and interesting because Ascension was so awful. I thought, this is the end of my streaming career. Like, nobody's going to watch this. And I've already committed myself to following it. Horrible. Horrible, horrible, horrible. Worst thing to exist with Silent Hill in the name. And that includes, like, fan games. Worst thing. Worst thing. Oh. Silent Hill, the short message. This was a free game released for the PlayStation 5. And it's probably a good thing it was free, because I feel like most people are kind of meh. I don't see people who really hate short message. I don't see people who really love it either. I do see a lot of people saying, it was okay for a free thing. And that's kind of it, right? That's kind of it. Short message. It's short. It's got a message. It's free on PlayStation 5. It's got some Akira Yamaoka music. It's pretty good. It's got a Masahiro Ito creature chasing you around, Sakura head. So, like, it's got some stuff there. It's got some juice in it. It's not devoid the way, like, Ascension or a lot of these are. There's things there. And one of the things that's a little bit frustrating about it is I like the message. A lot of people, their complaint is sort of with the story. and how it's kind of immature in the way that it's presented, and I think that's the biggest problem with it. I think the subject matter itself is an important topic, and it could have been something better. It deals with the character Anita, who is, she's got a very tight-knit friend group, essentially only 2 friends. And otherwise is sort of a social outcast, who makes artwork, and like her friend who also does artwork, but the friend's artwork is appreciated more than her own. She starts to feel overshadowed by her friend, and kind of comes to resent the friend, and it deals with a lot of topics. Like, it's a newer thing, but it is something that affects a lot of people, not just younger people. I would say probably younger people more, but people who are just on social media a lot, regardless of age or generation or anything. The idea that you are uncomfortable with who you are because you go on social media and see people who get more attention or are more popular, or, whatever. And then the negativity that comes with social media, people, telling you to, oh, you're worthless, you're garbage, you should just kill yourself. Like, these are all very real things that impact people in very real ways. Cyberbullying, online bullying, has taken lives. And it's something that I think a lot of people maybe don't. It's a hard topic for people to take seriously if it's not presented in a realistic and serious way. And that is what Short Message missed the mark on. The way that issue is presented came off very immature and felt like it was written by somebody. This is, if you've ever watched a movie or a TV show or anything where you have like a character who's supposed to be like a teenager, and they're very clearly written by like a 65-year-old white guy who, doesn't remember high school at all. That's the way a lot of Short Message comes across. It's like, not saying exactly, because I think it's a Japanese writer, but the just for the comparison's sake, the dialogue and the presentation of the subject matter felt just so detached from how it would be in reality. Yeah. Somebody who wanted to address these issues but had no experience personally of what it was like to go through that, and to be put into a really, really bad mental state because of it. Especially to the point of feeling responsible for somebody else's suicide. Your friend who took their own life, and as a survivor's guilt, that's another thing, could have been explored in some really good, important, deep ways with something like Short Message. And instead, Short Message ends with Anita about to jump off a roof and take her own life, until her friend calls and says, "Hey, let's go to the mall. You shouldn't kill yourself. You're so pretty. I would be so sad. Let's hang out instead." And I know that that's a real thing for a lot of people. Having a mundane conversation with your friend can be, in reality, the thing that makes you reconsider, makes you reevaluate. And I'm not trying to say that that's not realistic, but when you need your audience to understand the subject and take it seriously, I don't think I don't think that's it. I don't think that dialogue, that scene, um, the way that stuff is presented is is handling that really difficult subject matter the way that it should be. I'll give them some credit for at least like trying. An attempt was made. Gameplay wise, it's very flat. Um, the environments are nice. There's some details. I like my good detailed environments to explore. You don't get a whole lot of opportunity to explore them, the more interesting parts of it. And this is actually an issue that I had with Shattered Memories, which is all the way up here in A tier. Um, which is the more interesting parts of the environments, the otherworld segments, you I want to stop and look at them because there's a lot of detail, but you can't because chase sequence is currently happening. So you got to keep moving. You got to keep avoiding the monster. You don't really get to build up the slow tension where you get to look at the environments a little bit more first. Um, so yeah, the more interesting parts of it were just kind of like you didn't get to enjoy them for very long. Um, and then yeah, the story and the characters, it's frustrating because it's stuff that it's subject matter that I think is interesting and I think would work really well for a Silent Hill story to explore them. But they're just not done super well. This game, I if I had paid money for this, if I had paid like $20 or $30 for this or something, um, this would probably be like here. Maybe not below that, but yeah, somewhere around like here. The fact that I didn't have to spend any money on it, it's not a huge time investment. It doesn't try to be anything that it's not. Um, I would put it maybe up here, bump it up to a C tier below Origins. It's around here though. It's around here for me. And there is another thing that it does that I know people are gonna we're gonna get into that conversation later. Um because it kind of goes into Silent Hill F and the idea of what is Silent Hill? Is it a location or is it just, a foggy otherworld with creatures from your mind that can happen anywhere? Because there's a lot of debate among fans now because of that, because of the new direction that the series is taking. The revitalization has made it very clear that they want to separate Silent Hill from Silent Hill. The Silent Hill, as in the town, the physical location called Silent Hill, is a separate, completely separate thing to Silent Hill, as in darkness, fog, otherworld, monsters from your mind, the things that we think of when we think Silent Hill, not necessarily the town itself. And I'm not one of those Silent Hill purist fans who is like, it has to be in the town. There's been plenty of examples, several on this list that are very high up, where the game doesn't take place in Silent Hill, either for part of it or all of it. They've already done this. without having to explain it away. Silent Hill 3, more than the first half of the game, is not in Silent Hill, but you have a reason for things to be happening. You've got the presence of people like Claudia Wolf. You've got the god that is physically there growing inside of Heather. Heather herself and her own latent abilities. These things that tie directly to the town, to the cult, are enough for me to feel satisfied as a fan, to be like, yeah, that makes sense. You know? Even if a person leaves Silent Hill, if they've got a fucking god growing inside of them, I buy that as a reasonable explanation for an other world or for things to manifest around that person rather than the town. Silent Hill 4. Walter Sullivan. 4 doesn't take place in Silent Hill. It takes place in Ashfield. But the ties to Walter Sullivan, the ritual that Walter Sullivan is performing, and the powers that he gains by doing that are explained in the game, in the memos. It tells you why that stuff happens. And it still ties back to the town. You still have a cult's god with very real powers affecting reality in places other than the town. That's okay. As long as narratively there is a satisfying reason for things to be otherworldly, then I'm okay with Silent Hill not being in Silent Hill. Short Message approaches that in a very weird way. And that's the Silent Hill phenomenon. One note. There's very similar to some of these other things that I've mentioned. There's very little Silent Hill in Silent Hill: The Short Message. And the little bit that is there, it's mostly one note. And that one note is explaining the Silent Hill phenomenon. The way it's described as a mental condition where people hallucinate and see fog, and they liken it to COVID. It's such a weird way to try to contextualize Silent Hill stuff happening outside of Silent Hill. There doesn't need to be a worldwide recognized phenomenon. It makes more sense when you have individual people, for example, Silent Hill 2, the original, has a really wonderful note from a doctor. And it's basically a doctor trying to logically explain from an outside perspective what it looks like to someone who's not experiencing Silent Hill compared to someone who is. And the doctor is like, I'm a doctor, not a philosopher. I can observe physical things happening with my patient that are stemming from their mental condition. And they're trying to figure out a logical way to explain that. Silent Hill 4 does a similar thing. You have the police and the detectives and Joseph Schreiber himself, everyone's going to correct me. Joseph Schreiber and the police, the detectives, trying to figure out Walter Sullivan. He killed himself with a soup spoon, but somehow people are still dying in the same way that Walter was killing them, even after Walter killed himself. Now, we as Silent Hill fans understand that Walter performed a ritual that has very real powers, real effects. By killing himself, he was shedding the flesh and attaining the powers of heaven is the way it's described in a memo. Basically, by performing the first 10 murders and then taking his own life, he becomes a ghost with Silent Hill powers. And the police and the detectives, they don't know any of that. They don't believe any of that. So they're trying to explain it. So you have these notes and this dialogue from police and from Joseph where they're like, oh, maybe it's a copycat killer. Maybe it's somebody copying how Walter killed people. Maybe that wasn't really Walter who killed himself in the jail cell, and the real Walter is still out there alive and murdering people. They were running through the logical things that a normal person would think about before coming to the conclusion, oh, he must be a magical ghost. Because that's a lot harder for most people to accept. Despite being the truth of what's happening. So, the idea of like explaining Silent Hill from a logical perspective, it's been done, and it doesn't need to be done the way Short Message does it, where it's just kind of a blanket statement. It's the Silent Hill phenomenon. Everybody knows that. Are you hallucinating and seeing fog? That must be the Silent Hill phenomenon. Keep your mask on. I don't want to catch it from you because it's like COVID. It will draw in and affect other people around you. That's what the Short Message was saying. I don't agree with that interpretation. I don't like that as an excuse going forward. And it's probably going to be the reason that they give for stuff like Silent Hill F. I feel like Short Message was there to kind of establish some of that lore for the sake of Silent Hill F, to make people a bit more accepting of it being set in Japan. So, it just comes off as clunky. And it's not necessary. It doesn't need to be explained. It literally needs no explanation. It can stay mysterious. You can have your note about, some regular person trying to logically analyze why things are weird. But beyond like speculation like that, it doesn't need the type of explanation. It doesn't need to be spelled out the way Short Message spelled it out. So don't like that. But anyway, that's Short Message. The bottom of C tier. It's free, so I'm not allowed to complain. Time for a game that was not free. Time for a game that I bought the special super expensive deluxe edition twice. Once for PS5 and once for PC. And let me tell you, I am not disappointed with my purchases. This, when it was announced, had me so worried. I played every single Bloober game in preparation for Silent Hill 2 Remake after it was very first announced that the remake was happening and that Bloober Team was going to be the ones making it. I played every single Bloober Team game in preparation, and I did not like a single one of them. Layers of Fear, Layers of Fear 2, The Medium, Blair Witch. They're full of tropes, shitty jump scares, terrible writing, big plot holes, super basic gameplay. The only thing I ever really praised from Bloober Team was their visuals. They can make some nice looking environments. They can do some cool looking visual effects. They beat those visual effects into the fucking ground. Like, every single one of their games is, hey, come look at this thing. Now turn around. The room is different. The door that was there, it's gone now. The hallway that was there, yeah, it's something else now. Over and over and over and over again. So much so that, yeah, we refer to that now as Bluebird. Rachel and I and other people, like, anytime that sort of thing happens, we're just like, oh, got Bluebird. They're bloobing me. So, for me, it was my favorite game being remade by a studio who had never made anything I liked. I was so scared. I was so worried. I need a soundboard. I need a Silent Hill soundboard. I can just push a button and Maria can go, I've never been so scared in my whole life. I was really worried about Silent Hill 2 Remake. And I knew I was going to be super hyper critical of it when it came out, more so than probably any other Silent Hill game. and the game came out, and I was very critical of it, and I paid attention to everything, and I was nitpicky about every little thing that I didn't like about it. And I finished my playthrough in like 28 hours, something like that. It's on YouTube. And you know what? I fucking loved it. I fucking loved it. I am probably I am the fan, like the Silent Hill fanboy that Bloober Team must have been dreading. That those developers, those writers, they were going to sleep and having nightmares about me and fans like me. And they're like, they're going to shit all over it. We're going to put in all this time and effort and they're just going to hate it because it's different and because we changed things. I played the Silent Hill 2 remake and I was so relieved. I was so relieved. Bloober managed to take my favorite game and modernize it. Something that I have always vehemently said that Silent Hill 2 does not need. I've always very firmly said I would much rather have better availability for the original games rather than remakes. Just, put the original games on like Steam and GOG or PS5 or whatever, rather than remakes. But in terms of remakes, Silent Hill 2 Remake was so impressive. The level of detail, so many little things that they acknowledged in the game itself, little references to even things outside of the original game that were like common fan theories get referenced. And there's a recent interview with some Bloober developers where they even mention that specifically, how they spent a lot of time and effort going through fan theories, watching videos, probably some of mine, reading forums, looking over the fan base, and applying those theories and information to things in the remake. Sometimes in a major way, sometimes just a little slight nod or acknowledgement, but it was so above and beyond what I expected, even with my very high bar. and low expectations for Bloober, they managed to do something really incredible. I feel like rather than try to replace the original game, the remake felt like a love letter to the original game. It was all of Bloober, everybody who worked on it, sort of showing their appreciation for Silent Hill 2. And that feeling, more than anything else, more than any kind of flaws it might have, the passion is what shines through the most. When I'm going through and I'm finding little tiny textures that are painstakingly recreated from textures and assets of the original game to make it like down to the pixel accurate, and stuff that you would never even see. The prison, there's the room with the rifle has the Japanese no masks up on the wall. Those are there in the prison, in that room, in the original game, but you can't see them without a hacked camera. They're on a wall in a room where there's a static camera angle. So normally, as the player in that room, you would never, ever see those masks. You would never know that they exist in the original, unless you watch like a boundary break video, or you used a first-person camera mod, or a free cam mod while playing Silent Hill 2. You would never know that those masks are there. And they were there in the remake. And I was just like, wow. This is something from the original that even people who played the original religiously probably wouldn't know is there. And they still referenced it. And the whole game is full of stuff like that. The level of dedication and passion that went into the remake completely blew me away. Now, that said, there are obviously things I don't necessarily like about the remake. It's a little bit long for my liking. The more I've played it, the more that feeling sort of creeps in. The pacing is not as good, and it's understandable because of the way they had to change things. They have to change how you progress. They have to change combat. They have to change certain things in order to kind of prop up other aspects of modernizing it. And I felt like those changes hurt the pacing of it. Some of the performances I love. Now, even I love the original performances. They are ingrained into my brain permanently. I can essentially recite all of Silent Hill 2 right down to all the line deliveries and inflections from memory. And if you don't believe me, go watch my video of the Silent Hill 2 Game Boy D-Make, where I basically perform all of Silent Hill 2. Yeah. As much as I love those performances, Remake, it's got some really fucking good ones. Some of them needed to grow on me a little bit. They didn't hit with me super well at first, and then I kind of warmed up to them. Angela being one of those where like, it was a little rocky with some of the deliveries. I was like, they kind of give her too much of a vocal fry, and these certain lines sound a little bit strange, but the way they've portrayed her character, and they give you more Angela, you get an extra cutscene of her in Rosewater Park that I really liked, and kind of contextualized a lot of Gianna Keel's performance for Angela compared to Donna Burke's in the original that made it work. Even though, like, the original is always going to have a special place in my heart, like, none of the performances in the remake felt bad. At worst, there's times where they're kind of flat. And I think there's a few lines where it's noticeable that they tried a little bit too much to follow the original dialogue and inflections. Like, you want to keep it close for certain things, but then, like, the one that sticks out like a sore thumb to me is Maria in Brookhaven, when she reunites with James, and you get the "anyway, what do you mean anyway? I was almost killed back there." That whole delivery sounds so different from the way Salome delivered Mary and Maria's lines for most of the other scenes. That one stands out to me as being like, she really, or somebody had her really watch the original a lot and try to match certain things closer than she would do normally. So it came off as strange. Not in a good way. But those are very small nitpicks. Those moments for me throughout the game are very few and far between, where a performance doesn't quite hit right for me or doesn't quite match the scene. More often, rather than the dialogue not matching, as much as I love the soundtrack, I will say there's a lot of times where the music doesn't fit. Like, it's a great soundtrack, and just listening to it on its own is a good experience. And there's a lot of times where the soundtrack is well done and fits the scene and the moment in the game kind of well. There's also a lot where it feels a little bit weird and doesn't quite match the vibe of the cutscene. Now, again, this is all personal preference stuff. I'm talking about feelings and vibes. This is all totally just opinions, nothing objectively wrong with the performances or anything like that. The quality of them, things like that, are all really, really well done. Again, I love how much Bloober clearly loved Silent Hill 2 when making the remake. And I feel like it does well to establish itself as its own separate thing that still encourages you to go look at the original. And I'm really happy that it was done that way, because I've seen a lot of fans. Again, I look at a lot of the Silent Hill subreddit and a lot of YouTubers and stuff like that, and read through their comment sections to try to get an idea of how the Silent Hill fan base, beyond just our own little community here, how the Silent Hill fan base as a larger whole feels about these things. And yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting seeing kind of how people felt about it, and how a lot of people whose first game was Silent Hill 2 Remake, and they immediately went to go play the original afterwards. There were so many posts on the subreddit, like the first couple weeks after Remake came out, where people were like, "I just beat Remake. This is amazing. Where can I play the original?" And to me, like, that says it all. They didn't just play the remake and go, "That was cool," and leave it at that. It makes you want to go look for more Silent Hill. It makes you want more. It makes you want to delve into the original. And oh man, all these little moments, these little flashback scenes, what were those all about? Well, go play the original and you'll find out. All these little references where it's like, oh, there's clearly this thing being highlighted. You know, there's emphasis on this moment or this line or this item or thing in the environment without a whole lot of explanation as to why. But it encourages people to go play that original and find out. Now, I will say Silent Hill 2 had the benefit of coming out 24 years ago. And from a technological standpoint, from just that time period of gaming, Silent Hill 2 pushed a lot of boundaries. It broke new ground in a lot of ways. There, you know, motion capture with multiple actors on the set together, being captured at the same time, reading their lines with each other rather than completely separately in audio booths, you know, in a whole nother country. Like, Silent Hill 2 did so many things that were not industry standard at the time and helped push the limits for the hardware and for that level of writing and detail and characterization and very real, heavy, relatable topics that were not handled in like a silly video game way. So the remake, being a remake just by nature, does not do those same things. It doesn't push those same boundaries by today's standards. But it still handles all those things that Silent Hill 2 did all those years ago in a way that didn't feel disrespectful. I never felt like Remake was, you know, disrespecting my intelligence as a player. I never felt like it was sugarcoating any of the subject matter. If anything, it really emphasizes it much more than I would have thought they would. But again, by today's standards with other games, and it's not quite so boundary breaking, but still handles a lot of those things really, really well. Which is why Silent Hill 2 Remake is the best Silent Hill game that I've played since Shattered Memories in 2009. I'm putting it in A tier. It is below only the big three. Very thoroughly impressed with Remake. Bloober has won my trust when it comes to understanding Silent Hill and recreating it. They have my trust. What I will say is I would like to see Bloober take what they learned from making Silent Hill 2 Remake, and I would love to see them make an original Silent Hill game. Hopefully they do that. They might already be doing that. They might also have some remakes in the works. People are speculating they might be remaking 1 and 3. But yeah, that is my Silent Hill tier list. Silent Hill 2, above all else. Just below that, Silent Hill 3. Just below that in A tier, Silent Hill 1. Just below that, Silent Hill 2 Remake. Just below that, Shattered Memories. Just below that, PT. sitting by itself here in B tier. Silent Hill 4. Play Novel. Homecoming. The Arcade. Origins. Short Message. C tier. If you've played all the other Silent Hills and you haven't played these, they're kind of middling, but still worth playing. D tier. If you've got nothing else, sure, go play Downpour. Some people like it. You don't really have to bother with these. Don't worry about mobile. And avoid. Avoid like the plague. Book of Memories, Silent Hill The Escape, Silent Hill Ascension. Can we just not? Could we don't? They don't need to exist. But there we go. That's my Silent Hill tier list. And if you disagree, complain, argue with me in the comments, because this will be on YouTube. So, go ahead. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I didn't understand Downpour, despite thousands of hours of experience playing it.